There's an open tag by Big J's Knives called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. The best and the worst knives of 2023. Let's get started with an easy pick. We'll start with slip joints. I'm going to divide this up in categories because there's just too many knives to just have an overall best and worst. I can't pick one out like that. So I'm going to do some different categories. Starting with the slip joints. The best purchase of a new knife in 2023, I think by far, would be in this slip right here. This is a slip that I just made last night, and I made it specifically for this knife because I love this knife that much. That is the Lake Champlain Barlow. So you'll see I did the orange stitching on here to match the orange that's in the knife. These are just awesome. The walk and talk on them is excellent. The blade steel is M390. And I'll tell you what, this is every bit as good as Jack Wolf's S90V. This stuff is awesome. The knife has a pretty long blade. As you can see there, it's about 3 3/8 with a good 3-inch cutting edge. These are just incredible knives. Matter of fact, it's so good. I also have the clip point. It came in 2 different versions. There are a lot of different cover materials, but those are the 2 versions that it comes in. They are just excellent knives. They're knives that are well worth consideration if you're looking for something like that in a modern slip joint. Another really good purchase that I had made was this Boker 4-inch Stockman. This is the one that got me into the Boker Stockmans. It's a really nice knife. Beautiful clip point. These aren't like the medium Stockmans. They have some height on the blade, so they're substantial. The medium Stockmans feel like little toys. There's the sheep's foot and the spay blade. So what I owe this knife to is I started looking for some older ones. That's another slip that I made. And this is an older one. A few weeks ago I showed the restoration of this. This knife is late 1970s to maybe 1981 or 2. So this is at least a 40-year-old knife in carbon steel. This originally would have been the spay blade, but it was severely worn, so I was able to grind it down into a sheep's foot. And the original sheep's foot, with how worn it was, now became a pen blade. This knife turned out beautiful. I love carrying this knife. This is one of my favorites. And since then, I have also got, this is another old 4-inch Boker, but this one has been unused. The blades have never been sharpened, and this is in the exact condition it came in. Has a chestnut bone. You can see the fit and finish on it is beautiful. There's no gaps in it. There's your main blade. And then you can see the logo on the main blade. There's a little bit of peppering. And then you can see it says Boker, and you can see Sologen on there. And on the shield it says Sologen. Same thing with this one. On the shield you'll have Sologen. And also there's Sologen Germany on the stamp. So these knives have just been a joy. Of the 3, obviously this one is the best. So this will be the pick for modern slip joint, and the Boker 4-inch Stockmans will be the pick as in a 4-inch traditional slip joint. Now let's move on a little bit to an honorable mention. Anything by Rosecraft. They've just done an awesome job on slip joints. So anything Rosecraft has is an excellent buy. Just open these up. We'll see if we can display these knives as we're talking about them. Okay. Let's move on to another knife category. I'm just going to do EDC fixed blades. I'm not going to do all fixed blades. You guys have all seen this knife before. This has been a game changer ever since I added this leather belt loop on here. Now you can carry this cross draw on either side. It's a bloodwood handle, 5/32 inch 01 tool steel, convex grind, 3.5 inch blade. This is just an awesome knife. It's nice and thick, stout tip, but yet it comes down thin enough behind the tip to be a good slicer and to get work done. So this is a very strong knife. It's an excellent knife to carry with you as an EDC fixed blade. And in my opinion, if you're going to carry an EDC fixed blade, it should do more and be more capable than a folder that you're going to carry. Otherwise, why not just carry the folder? Why go through the inconvenience of a larger fixed blade? Now, next category is going to be modern folder. And I think by far, in large modern folder, the best purchase I made in 2023 was this Cold Steel Mayhem. This is an awesome knife. This is very reminiscent of a shark lock. Just pull back on here, and you can open and close the knife. Now for the worst purchases of 2023. That would be some of these Rough Riders where when you open the blade up, might be a little difficult to see. There, I think you can see it. The blade is not straight with the knife. You can see how far to the left that blade is canted. That just annoys me. It's one thing if the centering is off, but look, the centering isn't bad. So the only conclusion is they're not drilling the pivot straight. You know, Case does the same thing. I'll give you another mention for worst knife of the year 2023, and this one probably takes the cake because they're around $80 a piece. That is the Case Rust Lock. I've been through 3 of them. I ordered 3 different ones, and every single one of them had the blade hard rubbing on the liner on one side. That is just not acceptable in a knife of that price range. Case really needs to get their act together. They're so close on their fit and finish. They make beautiful knives, but sometimes it's just these things are just so irritating how bad they can be in one aspect. A knife in that price range should not have those problems. It should be done right. So those are my picks for the worst of 2023. They would be the bad and definitely the ugly. And now for the final category, modern folding knives. The knife that has seen the most pocket time in 2023 is this Cold Steel Large Voyager. This has a 4-inch blade with a tanto tip, a nice hollow grind, and then a flat grind here on the tip for more metal behind the edge. So it gives you both slicing and strength and a lot of utility value with this tip. This point is very useful. This point will do all the same type of draw cuts and utility cuts as a Wharncliffe or sheepsfoot blade. It also has excellent slicing. And then you have utility. You can do scraping. You can hold this and do small cutting tasks just like you would if you had a small knife. So it's very nimble and very flexible. This is just an awesome EDC knife. Now, this is their cheaper line. I paid $42 for this knife. You have basically FRN scales, and you have an AUS 10 blade. The other side just says Voyager. So this is a really good knife, and it's a knife that it makes a good work knife because you're not afraid to use it, and if something happens to it, you just buy another one. This knife really hits a sweet spot, but I wanted to carry something a little bit finer, something a little bit classier. So I carried this Recon 1 quite a bit. Basically the same knife, but upgraded materials. This is also a 4-inch tanto blade, same hollow grind, and then a flat grind on the tanto tip. So pretty much the same knife as the Voyager, except upgraded materials. This one has S35VN blade steel and G10 scales. This one is really nice. It's got a great texture. So does this one. These have great texture to give you a lot of grip. So if it's cold or your hands are wet, you don't slip. You have a really good purchase on the knife. They also have very ergonomic handles. Your hand fits there perfectly. You can also choke up on these knives. Same thing with this one. Perfect grip and choke up spot. They're comfortable any way you hold them, whether it's a pinch grip and you have that knurling, you have that texture. Just wonderful knives. So they're equivalent to each other, except this is an upgraded one. This one cost $80. So again, not an exorbitant price. You can afford to buy one of these and use it, and if something happens, it is replaceable. It's not out of the realm. It's not like having one of these multi-$100 knives. You go buy a Benchmade for $250. First of all, you only get half the knife, and second of all, if you lose it or damage it, that's something you don't want to replace. It becomes expensive to the point where you don't use the knife like you really need to use a knife because you're afraid of doing any kind of damage to it. Well, these things are tough. These have a triad lock. They do an excellent heat treat on their S35VN and on their AUS-10. They're just bulletproof blades. And if the tanto isn't your thing, you could always go for the clip point. Same knife, Recon one, but you have a clip point instead of a tanto, and the whole blade is a flat grind. So you have good strength behind the edge. This gives you not as good a slicing as the hollow grind, but still good slicing, and it gives you some extra strength, stronger than the hollow grind. So that's a good compromise when you just have one edge. See, these have two edges, so you can have two different grinds, which is really nice. But the edge angle that it's sharpened at is the same. So this is another really good choice. I haven't carried this one at all. It's been these two. This has been the most carried, and then this has been the second most carried. And this is what I'll be carrying from here on out over top of this one. As a matter of fact, this one I liked so much, I got a backup. I have one new in the box in my safe ready to go. And another knife for the candidate of one of the best knives of 2023 is this Voyager Nightshade. This one is an LMAX, and it's just phenomenal. If you look at that edge, I laid that edge way back. In here, the edge is 25 degrees inclusive, or 12.5 degrees per side. As you get to the tip, you can see that bevel is a little smaller. That's about 28 degrees up on the tip. And the way I did that is when you're pulling the knife on the stone, as you get towards the end, towards the tip, you lift up. So that way I could decrease the angle here, because I wanted a tip that was a little bit more stout. I didn't want to thin the tip out quite as much as the rest of the blade. This just works out perfect. I've had no problems with edge durability with this LMAX. It's held up great, and it's done everything I asked of it. And lowering the edge angle improves your edge retention, and it also improves your slicing ability. So I am just thrilled with this knife. And I love this particular version. I love it with the copper, the patinas. I mean, since this isn't a carbon steel blade, the blade's not going to get any patina. This is stainless, but at least I have a bolster that can patina. This is a liner lock. You have a flipper. Try to be careful doing this behind the camera. You can also do your Spidey flick, and you can do your regular thumb flick. And this knife also works pretty good lefty, using the flipper. And this knife closes very easily lefty with the liner lock. And also Spidey flick. Just get right in here. The cutout on this is perfect how they did this. You can get right in here, push it, and close it. And this knife is pretty drop shutty. Now, this is one of the very few, if not the only liner lock that I ever used that I really like. one thing that's unique with this liner lock is it does not irritate your finger. A lot of times if you do a little bit of fidgeting with the liner lock, it starts to wear on your thumb and your thumb starts to get a little bit raw, but not on this one. You could sit here and you could flip this thing 100 times and there's no issues, none at all. This is just a wonderful knife. I love this version with the dual opening, with the thumb hole, and with the flipper. The reason this knife isn't going to make my favorite of 2023 is it's a little bit too small. This is a 3¼ inch blade. This is a 4-inch blade. You can see the difference there. Let me see if I can get it sideways, get more of the knives in the picture. So you can see the difference. I like the extra reach of a 4-inch blade. That said, there's pretty much nothing in my daily cutting tasks that this knife won't handle just fine. I just prefer a 4-inch blade, and I really like having that secondary edge. But this knife does incredible. With that angle, it may look a little strange at first, and it is something you have to get used to. That's right down for draw cuts, just like using the secondary tip on the Tanto or using a Wharncliffe or Sheepsfoot or other blade like that. This does utility cuts just as good. The other thing with that angle, as I'm holding the knife straight, the blade is angled down, so it traps material in here as you're cutting instead of letting it slide off the edge of the blade. And when I'm actually cutting and pulling through, that angle makes a scissor or a shearing type action, and it just increases your cutting performance. This knife just does everything well. It excels at daily use and cutting. You know, any kind of utility tasks or anything that you have to cut, this cuts it aggressively. So it's an excellent knife, and it definitely is worth considering. Let me pull these out. So these are my 2 top choices in the best modern folder that I have carried in 2023. I have enjoyed these more than any other folder that I have carried. I love these snaggletooths. I put these in all the cold steels. And as you draw the knife out of your pocket, this catches on the corner of your pocket and automatically deploys the blade. So even though the triad lock isn't fidgetable, I mean, you pretty much slow roll them open and then you can, no problem, closing them one-handed. But that automatically deploys out of your pocket, which is just a lot of fun. So that makes up for a lack of fidget factor that this knife has. So that's a wrap up for 2023. These are the 2 modern folders that I have enjoyed carrying the most out of everything that I have, regardless of the price range. Like I said, $80, and this is about $120. We'll see you on the next one.